This video is on student loan debt. So if it's a part of your life, either currently or it's about to be part of your life, hopefully this video helps you make a more informed decision on how to handle that student loan debt and whether or not you should even go into it. Now, before we dive into it, I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit just so you know who you're getting advice from. My name is Jake. I'm 25 years old and I'm currently a financial consultant for the Department of Defense. I have a six-figure portfolio of investments. I have a rental property that cash flows, and I have two kids, which are incredibly expensive, but I wouldn't change that for the world. I have a beautiful wife who doesn't have to work. By the grace of God, I'm able to make enough to provide for my family. And then the main one that relates to this video the most is we currently have no student loan debt. We paid it all off. So if that's not a good enough reason to listen to some of my advice, I don't know what is. But what makes this video so exciting is I get to talk to you all in the lens of an older brother. So I got to have this conversation with my younger sister and my younger brother, and now I get to have it with you. So we're gonna go ahead and dive into kind of the 5 talking points that I came up with. You're 17, 18 years old, you're thinking about going to college. Good for you. You've worked hard to get to this point, to even consider it. That's awesome. For younger me, my parents sat me down at 17 and told me that they had $25,000 saved up for me, which is incredibly generous, and it wasn't news to me considering I have 3 siblings, so I knew they didn't have college completely covered. But nonetheless, still having to wrap your head around going into $75,000 of student loan debt at 17 years old is pretty intense. You have to zoom out and not get cluttered with the football games and the parties and all the friends and cool campus amenities. And remember why you're going there in the first place. You're going there to get a job or learn how to become an entrepreneur and to get out and to make money. At the end of the day, we all want to be out of the rat race, right? Like that's the whole point of this. It's the whole point of, making money is so that way we can then put it into investments and vehicles that grow so that way we can eventually wake up and not have to report to anyone, not have to do a 9 to 5. So kind of the first step is just mentally preparing for what you're about to go through. Step 2 is making a plan of what going into this amount of student loan debt is actually going to look like, right? You don't want to go to college just on a whimsical basis that you're going to graduate making a good amount of money. You need to go with a set, somewhat career path that you want to follow so that way you can then graduate with an entry-level position and making enough money to pay for the student loan debt you just went into. Colleges want to force the agenda that you can go there and just figure it out. Find yourself the first year or two. And of course, that's what they want you to do. They want you to miss the classes that you need to graduate within 4 years. They want you to fail classes and take classes that you won't even end up needing, so that way you then have to become a 5th year and spend even more money at that university. So don't fall into that trap. Make a plan, know what path you want to go down, and if you're not ready to make that decision, then don't put yourself in the position to be in student loan debt without a plan. Once you have a general idea of the career path you want to go down, go to Indeed and find entry-level positions that you could get with the degree you're thinking about getting, right? There's no point of getting a degree in a career that isn't going to make you enough money to then pay off the student loan debt that you're going into to get that degree. Now, I know passion has a lot to do with it, and I don't think you should go into a work field just for the money, but money's a big deal and we need it to live, so you need to make a good informed decision on what degree you're going to get. As hard as it may be, have an open mindset to go into community college. There you can get the electives and kind of general idea of what you want to do at a much cheaper cost than a 4-year university. Step 3 we need to talk about is what makes it real, and that's the student loans itself. So we're going to talk about the different types of student loans. Now, of course, there's a bunch of kind of random ones, but the 2 main ones is private and federal. Federal loans are the ones you want. This is FAFSA. These are the ones that have much lower interest rates than private, but you don't get as much money. So FAFSA amounts are determined often on how much money your parents make. So because my parents made decent money but didn't have college paid for, I was in that kind of weird middle situation where I only got $7,500 of FAFSA money per year. So with JMU, which is the university that I went to, was around $25,000 at the time. I had to come up with that difference either by working or taking out private loans. So that brings us to loan number 2, which is private loans. Private loans have a much higher interest rate, so you want to avoid them all costs. Now, unfortunately, if you have to take out 75 grand of student loan debt, you're going to have to take out some private. Now, those are the ones that you want to prioritize paying off faster because they're going to compound and grow much more quickly. Now, you have to remember, if you are going to take out $75,000 of student loan debt, when you go to actually pay it off, it's going to be much more than $75,000 if interest is accruing over your college experience. So you need to prepare to work throughout college and work over summers to try and pay for as much school as possible so that way you can minimize the amount of private loans that you're taking out. All that to say, all student loans aren't the same, right? There's not some blanket student loan that you get yourself into. So you need to be very careful about the ones that you sign the dotted line on that you will then be responsible for paying off once you graduate. Step 4, now that we've kind of are now at peace with going into debt, is to dial in, right? Football games, parties, all that stuff we already talked about, those are all incredible byproducts of university. And don't get me wrong, they're incredibly fun. I want you to enjoy yourself while you're there, but you need to dial it in and focus on passing your classes with good grades so that way you can then be competitive in the job search when it comes time your junior and senior year to lock in those job positions. Some things you can be doing to prepare yourself is going to career fairs, finding those internships. Some may be unpaid. I had to do an unpaid finance internship just to get something finance related on my resume. And it stinks, but you might have to do it. Another thing you're going to do is mock interviews. Either join a business fraternity, but you need to be careful with those because they do have dues. So if you're already broke and being frugal, you might not want to do something where you have to pay dues for. But most places have career centers where you can do mock interviews. You want to knock those out so that way when the real thing comes along, you're prepared to kill it and get that job. And then I've heard this rumor that grades don't matter. Grades 100% matter. You have to list your GPA on most entry-level positions right out of college. And guess what? They're going to choose someone with a 3.8 over a 2.5 9 out of 10 times. The only time GPA doesn't matter is either if the job you're looking for doesn't require it, or a few years later after you've already graduated and you already have that work experience. Not only do grades matter in the first go around, at least in my opinion, your degree, this little piece of paper, only gets your foot in the door for interviews, right? So once you're there, it's you. You have to sell yourself so that way you are desirable for the position. You don't want to be one of these statistics that I saw, which is absolutely absurd, but you want to be able to make good eye contact, have good conversation, articulate your words, show your knowledge through experiences that you've gotten in college, whether on projects or team building activities that you've excelled in. Whatever you do, do not be one of these statistics. And listen, if you already are at university and you still haven't figured out what you want to do and you're already in student loan debt and you're like, why did I do this? Just know that you're going to be all right. You need to take a step back and you need to lock in. There's no more playing around, right? You've already wasted some time, and that's okay. Life happens, but it's time to dial in on what you want to do. And if you're truthfully like, I don't know what I want to do, then you need to cut your losses. You need to drop out. And I know there's such a bad stigma of dropping out, but you need to do what's best for you. At the end of the day, you're the one who's going to be paying off the student loan debt. No one's coming to save you. So it's okay to drop out, gather yourself, minimize the impact of the student loan debt you already have, get a job, make the payments, and when you're ready and you know exactly what you want to do, that's when you jump back in and when you go back and get the degree that you've decided you actually want to strive for. I knew that if I didn't get my butt out of bed and get to class, and if I didn't pass the exams and end up failing the class, I'd have to retake it, and that's another $2,500 out of my pocket, either through a summer school or not graduating on time. So there is a beauty of student loan debt that makes you try sometimes so much harder than some of your peers whose parents were able to just fully pay for college. So now that you've dialed in, you've gotten that job, you've graduated, and now you actually have this giant pile of student loan debt sitting on your shoulders, here's my advice on how to knock it out. Use dialed in for 4 years. You're like, I finally have some money, I finally have a good job, I actually want to start living my life. You can do that, but your student loan is going to compound, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I understand that there are certain times in life where you should just make the minimum payment. Life happens, I get it, but you need to be prepared to dial in another year or two, potentially live with your parents if you have the opportunity to do so, and make bigger payments than just the minimum so that way you can knock this student loan debt out of the park. And just so you're aware, when you make lump sum payments to your student loan, you'll often see your credit dip, as you'll see right here. Now, that seems counterintuitive. You're like, I just made a payment, why is my credit going down? But just be patient. This is the way credit works. It eventually will go back up. I'll definitely make a video on credit and why it's so important in another video, but we're not going to get into that right now. Before my outro, the beauty of being such a small YouTube channel is that I see everything. So in my description is an email that's linked kind of to this whole channel of getting out of the rat race. So if you do want to carry this conversation on about student loan debt or just finances in general, this is the email that you can directly reach me at, and I'd be happy to talk to you and kind of help you through, or maybe think through some more options outside of just a four-year university. So like I said, I'm proud of you, and I will see you guys next time.